You're not anxious, and you heard that right. That suffocating feeling in your chest, those spiraling thoughts and that constant fear of the future, it's not real anxiety. It's something far deeper, and simultaneously far simpler to resolve. Eckhart Tolle uncovered a shocking truth that will forever change how you understand your own suffering. For years you've tried everything: therapy, medication, breathing exercises, meditation. Some things helped temporarily, but the feeling always returned. It was like something inside you was screaming to be freed, but you couldn't identify what it was. You're not imagining this. Something inside you really is crying out for help. But it's not your mind that's sick. It's your soul that's imprisoned. Eckhart Tolle spent decades studying the nature of human consciousness, and he made a disturbing discovery. What we call anxiety is in fact the desperate voice of our soul, trying to warn us that we're living like ghosts of the past. Think about it for a moment. When you feel anxiety, what is it usually about? Fear of repeating old mistakes, worry that something bad that already happened will happen again, terror of reliving pains you thought you'd overcome. Your soul knows you're not truly here, that you're trapped in old versions of yourself. And it screams through anxiety because it's the only language you can still hear. But here's what no one tells you. This prison isn't physical. It's not in your brain. It's not in your genes. It's in a far more subtle dimension of your existence. It's in the fragments of your soul that got trapped in specific moments of your past. Let me explain this in a way you can feel the truth of these words. Have you ever been in a conversation and suddenly felt like you were 5 years old again? Like the person in front of you was your angry father or your critical mother, even if it's a co-worker. In those moments, you're not reacting to the present. You're reacting from a fragment of your soul that never left that childhood room, that's still waiting for approval, that's still trying to protect itself from a threat that no longer exists. Eckhart Tolle calls this an emotional pain body. It's as if there are old versions of you living simultaneously within your consciousness. The 3-year-old who felt abandoned, the 15-year-old who was humiliated, the young adult whose heart was broken. All these versions are there, active, influencing your reactions in the present. And when something in the external world vaguely reminds you of one of these old experiences, these soul fragments awaken, and they begin to scream. What you call anxiety is that scream. It's the desperate voice of these parts of you trying to protect you from dangers that no longer exist. It's like you're carrying an internal alarm system that's never been turned off. But here's the most shocking part. These fragments aren't just influencing your emotions. They're literally creating your reality. When you operate from these old versions of yourself, you attract situations into your life that confirm those old fears. That's why some people always feel rejected, even when they're surrounded by love. That's why others always feel in danger, even when they're completely safe. They're not living in the present. They're living in a distorted echo of the past. Can you feel it now? That sense that there's something very familiar about your anxiety, as if you already know exactly what kind of thoughts are going to come, what kind of sensations are going to arise. That's because they're not new thoughts. They're the same thoughts that fragment of your soul has been repeating for years, decades, maybe even generations, because these patterns didn't start with you. Eckhart Tolle discovered something revolutionary. These trapped soul fragments aren't just yours. Many of them were inherited, passed down from generation to generation through what he calls a family karmic imprint. That anxiety you feel might be the same one your grandmother felt when she lost everything in the war, the same fear your father carried when he was abandoned as a child, the same pattern of worry your mother learned to try to control a world that seemed chaotic. You are not just you. You are a receptacle of all the unhealed souls that came before you, and until these fragments are freed, they will continue to create the same painful experiences in your life. But here's the good news. Once you understand that anxiety isn't yours, you can begin to separate from it. You can begin to observe it as a phenomenon that's happening through you, but that isn't you. Stop for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel your breath going in and out. Now observe. Who is observing the breath? Who is aware that you are aware? That observing presence, that's the real you. That's your free soul. And it has always been there. Silent, patient, waiting for you to recognize it behind all the noise of the trapped fragments. Eckhart Tolle teaches that when you can identify with this observing presence, something extraordinary happens. The old fragments lose their power over you. It's like you walk out of a play where you were acting out roles you didn't choose and finally remember who you really are. But this doesn't happen overnight. These fragments have been forming over years. They've created deep neural pathways. They've become your familiar identity, and the mind is terrified of losing them, because without them, it doesn't know who you would be. That's why every time you try to meditate, every time you try to be present, a fierce resistance arises. It's not laziness and it's not lack of discipline. It's the defense system of these fragments trying to keep you trapped in the familiar prison. They prefer the known pain to the unknown of freedom. Okay, it's safer to continue being the wounded child, the rejected teenager, the betrayed young adult than to risk discovering who you could be without those painful identities. But here's what these fragments don't know. On the other side of that resistance, there is a peace they've never experienced. There is a freedom they can't even imagine. There is a version of you that doesn't need anxiety to feel safe. Eckhart Tolle calls this version your essential being. Hey, it's who you were before the traumas. It's who you will be after all the fragments are integrated. It's who you have always been beneath all the layers of protection and fear. And here is the secret that can change everything. You don't need to fight against those trapped fragments. You don't need to try to destroy or suppress them. You simply need to stop identifying with them. It's like discovering you're not the character in the movie. You're the screen on which the movie is being projected. The screen isn't affected by any scene. It remains pristine, no matter how dramatic or terrible the story. When you recognize yourself as the screen of consciousness, the old fragments may continue to appear, but they no longer define you. They become merely clouds passing across the sky of your presence. You've experienced this in rare moments of your life, those moments of inexplicable peace, when suddenly all anxiety vanished without apparent reason, when you felt completely okay, even if nothing in your external life had changed. In those moments, you weren't cured of anxiety. You were simply connecting with your free soul beneath all the trapped fragments, and in that connection, you remembered who you truly are. The technique Eckhart Tolle developed is a way to create these moments consciously, to access your free soul whenever you want, to live from that place of natural peace instead of living from the agitated fragments. But before learning the technique, you need to understand exactly how these fragments formed, how they managed to convince you they were you, and why they're so desperate to keep you trapped. The answer lies in a shocking discovery Eckhart Tolle made about the nature of time. He realized that the trapped fragments don't exist in the present. They exist in a parallel dimension of time he calls psychological time. In psychological time, the past hasn't passed. It's happening now. Your mother is still yelling at you. Your father is still ignoring you. Your colleagues are still humiliating you. Your ex is still betraying you. And as long as you live in psychological time, you'll be constantly bombarded by echoes of these experiences. Your anxiety isn't about the future. It's about a past that was never properly processed and that continues to repeat itself in the present. But in real time, in the pure present, none of this exists. In the absolute now, you are safe, you are whole, you are free. The problem is you've forgotten how to access the absolute now. You live in a past that projects a future based on old fears. And in this distorted temporal cycle, anxiety is inevitable. Because you're constantly trying to solve problems that no longer exist or prevent threats that may never exist. Eckhart Tolle discovered there's an escape hatch from this cycle, a way to collapse psychological time and return to real time. And when you do this, when something miraculous happens, the trapped fragments find nowhere to cling. It's as if they need the past and the future to exist. In the pure present, they simply dissolve, not through struggle or effort, but through the lack of temporal substance to sustain themselves. Imagine your anxiety as a ghost that can only exist in a haunted house. If you remove the house, the ghost has nowhere to live. If you remove psychological time, anxiety has nowhere to manifest. But here's the challenge. These fragments will fiercely resist any attempt to bring them into the present. They instinctively know that the present is where they die. It's where they lose all control over you. So they'll create distractions. They'll intensify the symptoms. They'll convince you that you need to solve everything before you can be present. They'll make you believe that presence is dangerous, that you need anxiety to stay safe. This resistance is the sign that you're on the right track. It's proof that the fragments are losing power. And if you can get through this resistance, you'll discover something that will change your life forever. You'll discover that you were never anxious. You were a free soul who had temporarily forgotten its own nature, and all the suffering was just the painful echo of this spiritual amnesia. The question now is, are you ready to remember who you really are? Are you ready to release the trapped fragments and live from your whole soul? Are you ready to discover that there's a version of you that doesn't know anxiety? Because if you are, Eckhart Tolle has developed a precise path to this liberation, a method tested by thousands of people who transformed their lives by understanding that they weren't their painful stories, but the eternal consciousness observing those stories. And this journey back to your free soul can begin now. Eckhart Tolle's method for releasing trapped fragments is revolutionary because it doesn't try to cure anxiety. It dissolves the illusion that created the anxiety. It's like discovering that the monster under the bed was just shadows on the wall. The first step of the method is shocking in its simplicity. Eckhart Tolle calls it radical acceptance. It's when you stop fighting anxiety and begin to observe it with scientific curiosity. The next time you feel that pressure in your chest, that tightness in your throat, those spiraling thoughts, do something different. Instead of trying to get rid of these sensations, approach them. As if you were a detective investigating a crime scene, ask the anxiety, when are you from? How old was I when you first appeared? What situation are you trying to protect me from? And then, just listen. Not with your analytical mind, but with your total presence, and what you'll discover will shock you. Anxiety isn't random. It has a specific story, a precise origin. Emily, one of the patients Eckhart Tolle treated, did this exercise and discovered something disturbing. Her social anxiety had the exact same quality of terror she felt at 7 years old, when her mother left her alone at a birthday party and took hours to return. That 7-year-old child was still inside her, terrified of being abandoned in any social group. All her adult anxieties were echoes of this primordial experience. Her soul had been trapped in that moment of childhood terror. But here's the most important part. When Emily recognized this, when she managed to feel the presence of that scared child, something extraordinary happened. The anxiety changed in quality. Instead of being a destructive force attacking her from within, it became a child asking for help. Instead of resisting, Emily could embrace. Instead of fighting, she could welcome. Eckhart Tolle teaches that every trapped fragment is waiting for only one thing, to be seen with compassion, not judged, not analyzed, not corrected, just acknowledged and embraced. It's as if these fragments are lost children in a dark forest, crying for help. The more you try to silence them, the louder they cry. But when you finally approach and say, I see you, I'm here, they can finally stop screaming. The second stage of the method is even more powerful. Eckhart Tolle calls it temporal dialogue. It's when you literally talk to the trapped fragment, but not as an adult talking to a child. As an eternal soul speaking to an eternal soul, you connect with your deepest presence. And from that place, you offer the fragment something it never received, complete understanding. You say to the 7-year-old child, I understand your fear. I understand why you feel abandoned. And I want you to know you'll never be alone again. But you don't just say it with words, you feel it. You allow your adult presence to completely envelop that part of you that's frozen in time. And then something miraculous happens. The trapped fragment begins to feel safe for the first time in decades, and it no longer needs to scream through anxiety because it's finally being heard. The third stage is the deepest of all. Eckhart Tolle calls it temporal integration. It's when you invite the fragment to come into the present, not to be healed or fixed, but to be included in the totality of who you are now. You say to that part of you, you no longer need to be trapped in the past. Come with me to the now. See how safe we are, see how loved we are, see how whole we are. At first, the fragment will resist. It's afraid of the present, because in the past, the present was dangerous. But when it feels the quality of the true present, the peace, the safety, the completeness, it begins to relax. It's like convincing a child who's hidden in a closet for years that it's safe to come out. It takes time. It requires patience. But when it finally comes out and sees that the danger has passed, the transformation is instantaneous. Pause now. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe deeply and feel your presence. this sensation of being here, now, alive and conscious. It's to this presence that all your trapped fragments want to return. Hua, another client of Eckhart Tolle, applied this method with a fragment that had formed when he was 15 and was brutally rejected by the first girl he loved. For 20 years, he carried a paralyzing anxiety in relationships. When Juan managed to talk to that 15-year-old teenager and bring him to the present, showing that he was now a mature man, capable of love and deserving of love, the romantic anxiety simply evaporated, not through years of therapy, not through medication, but through the simple integration of a part of himself that had been lost in time. But here's what you need to understand. This process isn't just psychological, it's profoundly spiritual, because when you integrate a trapped fragment, you're not just healing an emotional wound, you're recovering a part of your soul. Eckhart Tolle discovered that every trauma, every unprocessed painful experience, literally fragments our soul. It's as if pieces of ourselves become frozen at the moment of impact, unable to evolve, unable to grow. And while these fragments remain trapped, we live as diminished versions of ourselves. Our whole soul isn't available for the present life. We're operating on reduced energy, limited creativity, blocked love. But when we begin to release these fragments, something extraordinary happens. We become more than we were before the trauma, because now we have access not only to our present energy, but also to the energy that was trapped in the past. It's as if you've lived your whole life at only 60% of your capacity, and suddenly discover how to access the other 40%. You become more creative, more loving, more present, more alive. The anxiety disappears, not because you fought it, but because the root cause of the anxiety, the fragmentation of the soul, has been resolved. You're no longer fighting against parts of yourself. You are whole again. But the process has specific challenges that Eckhart Tolle carefully mapped out. The first challenge is that the fragments don't appear in chronological order. Sometimes the most accessible fragment isn't the oldest, but the one with the most emotional energy available at the moment. The second challenge is that some fragments are so deeply buried that they need several sessions to emerge completely. It's like emotional archaeology. You find one piece, integrate it, and that reveals another deeper piece. The third challenge is that as you release old fragments, your external life may temporarily destabilize. People who were used to your fragmented version may resist your wholeness. Situations that depended on your anxiety to exist may dissolve. This isn't a problem. It's a sign that the process is working. Your free soul is claiming its right to live authentically, and everything that isn't aligned with that authenticity naturally moves away. Sophia, an executive who worked with Eckhart Tolle, discovered that as she integrated her fragments related to paternal abandonment, she stopped attracting authoritarian bosses. Her energy changed so much that either they changed their behavior around her, or she naturally moved to healthier environments. The anxiety she felt at work, which lasted 15 years, disappeared in 6 weeks. Not because she learned to deal with difficult bosses, but because the part of her that attracted difficult bosses had been integrated and transformed. But here's Eckhart Tolle's deepest discovery. When you complete this integration process, when your soul is whole again, you realize something shocking about the nature of anxiety. It was never a problem to be solved. It was always a messenger trying to take you back home, to the wholeness that is your essential nature. Anxiety was your soul's alarm system, screaming, "You're living divided. There are parts of you trapped in the past. Go back and bring them home." That's why no anxiety management technique works in the long run, because they treat the messenger as if it were the problem, instead of listening to the message. When you finally hear the message and do what the anxiety is asking, rescue your lost fragments, the messenger no longer needs to scream. Its function has been fulfilled. And then you discover something that will forever change your perspective on emotional suffering. All psychological pain is actually a disguised plea, a call from your soul to return to wholeness. Depression is your soul saying, "Stop living a life that isn't yours." Anger is your soul saying, "Defend your sacred boundaries." Sadness is your soul saying, "Honor your losses and allow yourself to grieve." Anxiety is your soul saying, "Gather all your scattered fragments." When you understand this, you stop seeing your difficult emotions as enemies. You see them as allies and as guides. as teachers trying to show you the way back to wholeness. Eckhart Tolle teaches that a whole soul doesn't know chronic anxiety. It may feel appropriate fear in the face of real dangers. It may feel temporary worry about specific situations, but it doesn't carry that background anxiety that colors the entire life experience, because a whole soul is completely present. And in true presence, where all your energy is unified, where all your fragments are integrated, you have access to a strength that transcends any external circumstance. You become like a tree with deep roots. Storms may come and go, but you remain centered, grounded, and unshakable, not because you're insensitive, but because you are whole. And here's the most extraordinary promise of this work. When you reintegrate your trapped fragments, you don't just return to who you were before the traumas, you become more than you ever were, because now you have the wisdom that only comes from journeying through fragmentation and back to wholeness. You have the compassion that only arises from having rescued your own lost parts. You have the strength that only emerges when you gather all your scattered energy. You become a healer of fragmented souls because you know the way back home. You become a presence that calms others' anxieties because you carry the vibration of wholeness. People feel mysteriously at peace around you because your integrated soul creates a field of harmony that touches other souls, reminding them of their own possibility of wholeness. Your anxiety wasn't a flaw. It was a compass pointing to your lost totality. And now that you know how to interpret that compass, it can guide you not only to healing, but to a version of yourself that is more radiant than anything you ever imagined possible. The path is open. The fragments are waiting. Your free soul is calling. And on the other side of this journey of integration, there's a version of you who lives without anxiety. Not because they suppressed fear, but because they embraced all the pieces of themselves back into unity. This is the true healing that Eckhart Tolle discovered, not the elimination of anxiety, but the integration of the soul. And an integrated soul is a soul forever free,